So, Mom, when you were growing up and you first went to school at Woodmont Elementary, what was it like there when you were there at Woodmont?
It was like a sweet little neighborhood school. That's what I would say.
And how far was it from your house?
It was only probably a couple of miles, but I rode a bus. The bus picked you up.
And all the kids there were white when you were in elementary school?
Yes, because it was a neighborhood school, so everybody in the neighborhood was white. And it was in the Green Hills area of Nashville. And like I said, it was just a sweet little school, and you had the same little teachers, and you'd go the next little grade, and you knew everybody, and so
And that's where all your little friends were. Who were some of your friends there?
Let's see, my friends were Holly and Heather Thorne and Julie Harrington, and just little girls in the neighborhood that then I'd go spend their nights at their home and different things like that. Their fathers were all doctors that my father knew, that lived in the neighborhood, lived in my street or the street over, and then we all went to school together.
And then after Woodmont, what happened? Where did you go to school?
After Woodmont, I was in a special program that Metro had for 4th and 5th graders. It was supposed to be for like that exceptional child or whatever, and it was just done through some testing. And Metro had this program, and each class had 20 children. And, so in 4th and 5th grade, we took language, which regular classes didn't. And we had an orchestra, which regular classes didn't. We had 20 kids in the class, which regular classes were like 35, I think. And so it was at a school that's actually in my district where I live now, called Selwyn Park. And but it was a school that was mostly, I would say, it was kind of a blue-collar neighborhood at that time. But so our class was not involved with the rest of the school. And so we went there. I went into this little class for 2 years. And we used to be on a short bus. They'd be picked up by the short bus. And I don't know, this is kind of a funny aside, but we got picked up with some kids that had developmental disorders, and we rode the bus with those kids also. They went to different school. But my little best friend and I, Laurie, we used to go, well, what do you think their parents tell them? Do their parents tell them they're going to an exceptional school? And then I just thought, do you think we have the same problems as them, but our parents just told us that it was a special school for, we used to be kind of confused that maybe we had the same problems as these developmentally disabled kids that we just didn't know, but we figured it out later on. But I loved the school, but after 2 years, the program ceased, and then I went back to Woodmont for 6th grade.
Okay, and then after 6th grade, then where did your family go?
Well, after 6th grade, then I went to 7th grade at West Junior High, which was just a 7th grade. And then my father was a missionary, and I lived in Congo for 2 years, and I went to a boarding school there.
And so you were away from Nashville for 2 years, and then you came back after that to go to Hillsborough High School the first year it was integrated.
Right, in 71.
In 71.
And it was very controversial because I came back, and all my father's relatives were like, okay, we have places for them in private schools for all your kids, because we had 6 kids. And they were like, okay, we can get the girls into Harpeth Hall, we can get the rest of them into Innsworth. These were all private schools, because they just did not believe my parents wanted us to go to the desegregated schools. Because at that time there was that white flight in Nashville, and all these little schools were being opened, or people were trying to get their kids into private schools so they wouldn't have to go to the desegregated schools. But my parents just did not have that idea. They were happy for us to go to the desegregated schools.
And how was it different? Could you sense a difference even though you'd been out of the country and come back? I remember you always talk about how you felt very out of place coming back from Africa and then coming to Nashville, but I always wondered, I didn't realize it was the same year it got desegregated.
Well, because it wasn't a fear. I had no fear of going to a desegregated school, and my family did not have a fear. But a lot of our relatives did. Like, what? You're going to send your kids to that school? With those kids? That kind of type of thing.
That attitude, yeah.
But my family was like, yeah, that sounds great. Sounds what we'd want. So, yeah, so all my family, like the little kids went to Head, and the next kids went to Washington Middle School, and then I think one of my sisters went to West Middle School.
So everybody got bused to different places.
Everybody got bused to different places.
Interesting.
And I went to Hillsborough. Actually, I don't think there was a bus to go to Hillsborough for us. We just had to get rides. I mean, we lived very close, so there was no bus for us.
So what was the attitude like when you go into high school this first year of desegregation? Were people welcoming to these students, or?
Well, the thing I noticed the most was that even though you were in the same school with the black kids, you were not in the same classes. This is what I noticed the most, is that there seemed to be, the white kids seemed to be in more the college preparatory classes, and the black kids seemed to be in other type of classes. I noticed this. So, like, I was taking, like, an English track, and then, I was taking, like, the math, algebra 2, trig, whatever that, that thing was. And then the science, you'd take the chemistry and the physics and everything. And I only had one black person in all of my classes, and it was the same guy.
What was his name?
Well, his name was George Bugg, and I always wanted to know what happened to him. And I've met some people who have family members named Bugg, and I've asked them, like, are you related to George Bugg? And no one has really ever told me. But I figured he became a doctor or a scientist or something. I always wondered about that.
How did people treat him in the classes?
Fine. I mean, nobody treated him any different at all like that. But it's like you were in a desegregated school, but you were really segregated, not because, and it was a self-segregation. I mean, like, you'd go to assembly, all the black kids would sit together. It's just because you sat with your friends, and all the white kids sat together. And in the cafeteria, all the white kids sat together, all the black kids sat together. And then, extracurricular activities, after school, the black kids had to ride the bus home. And the white kids could stay in the neighborhood because their mother could come pick them up after school.
So were they not playing on the same sports teams, or?
Sports teams they did because they were playing football. The football players were playing football, and the basketball players. So there was probably, maybe they were giving them rides home because they were thinking this is going to make our football and basketball teams, win and all this because we had this talent, or whatever. But I was in theater. Nobody stayed after school to be in the plays. And I was in choir, and nobody was in choir. No black kids were in choir.
Wow. But so it was desegregated, but did there still seem to be like this otherness, like they weren't integrated into?
Right. It just was more of like, I think it was more of like a fear. Not fear, but just like they probably won't want to be friends with us. Or I don't think anybody even talked about it.
Really?
I don't think anybody even talked about it, or just, it was kind of like, I don't know. It was kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if they would want me to come up and talk to them. It's like it wouldn't have bothered me at all if someone come and talked to me. I wasn't afraid, but it just seems like there was a separateness just that was it was like everybody was there, but nobody was there together. Now, it was funny because there was our principal was white, and then there were two men that were at our school. They were both, their names were Dr. Williams and Dr. Peebles. And they were both black men, and Dr. Williams must have been from the islands. And he'd be there in the morning in the hallway going, hello, how are you? And he'd just be talking to everybody, hello, how are you? Just friendly.
Welcoming, yeah.
And then Dr. Peebles, who I've seen his name around. His name's Melvin Peebles. I've seen it over time. because he used to wear like short sleeve suits and things like that. He was an unusual man. And he would be like, get to class, everybody get to class, come on, get to class. You know what I mean? He was like getting everybody to class. But he would talk to you and be real, wanted to be real, get everybody involved type thing. But it just seems like you were definitely separate. It was like a separate but equal, and you were all there. But it didn't seem like anybody had an agenda or anything like that. And I just wonder over time. Okay, and then my father made me try out for the basketball team.
I was going to ask you about the basketball team.
Yeah. And he made me try out, and I had no talent at all. But he wanted me to try out for it because I had an aunt who had talent. He found out that if I tried out for that, I didn't have to take PE and I could take another academic course. Well, it was just ridiculous. I didn't even know how to play. So I tried out, and I was pathetic, and it was an embarrassment. And then the first cut was me and about 5 black girls who kind of had an attitude. I would say that's why the lady cut, the coach cut them. They had this attitude. And I just thought, I felt bad for them, but because they probably made it the next time because they probably just cut their attitude. They had talent, They were like
Yeah, but
girls.
you say it like that, like they had attitude. Was that the perception of what people at the time would have, that people that were challenging or pushed back?
Probably. I mean, probably their attitude was fine where they were from, and they were probably talented. So I didn't really have my perception was, God, you're so pathetic. You got cut with these other people who had bad attitude. But my sisters all played basketball. I had 3 sisters that came behind me, and 4 sisters that came behind me. They all played, and they all played on, integrated teams. And they seemed to have more as the time went on at Hillsborough, there was more relationship building between blacks and whites. I mean, definitely, because my sisters since they were on the basketball team and it was an integrated team, definitely, they had a much bigger relationship.
So when you'd go home from school and talk to our grandparents, dear and Papa, what would they say about the integration going on, or what would Papa say?
Parental involvement. The parents were very involved.
It's like at the time, because you mentioned because if you look at the establishment dates in a bunch of private schools in Nashville, a lot of them you can
they all
directly
start.
correlate
They
to
all
when the
start
busing started.
1971, Goodlettsville Christian Academy. They all was like Donaldson Christian Academy, Brentwood High.
Brentwood Academy.
Brentwood Academy. They all started kind of 1971. They pretty much started 71 because everybody had to find a school.
So what do you remember the adults at the time saying around you about this?
Well, they always would say, it's just too soon.
Just too soon.
That was the line.
Yeah.
It's too soon.
That things are moving just too quickly.
It's just too fast.
I can hear my grandparents saying that, actually.
Well, no, they didn't say it really.
Yeah, I can remember Papa saying things like that.
Maybe 10 years, maybe in the 60s, but by the 70s, he wasn't saying it was too soon.
It was time.
It was time. Yeah, it was time. But yeah, I had a lot of other relatives who I'd hear them and then just ask my parents, what are you thinking?
Why would you send this?
Why would you do that? And my parents would just shrug, because we don't believe in segregation. That's their line that they would always say. We just don't believe in it.
Well, and I remember you told me about this time where there was a black family that was moving into your neighborhood, and there was a community meeting about it. Tell me about that.
Yes. There was a black family. It was a doctor and it was a psychiatrist that I ended up working with later on, and he moved in a couple of doors down from us. And the street, was going to have a meeting about it. I don't know what they thought they were going to do, but they had a meeting. And so my parents didn't go to the meeting.
Because they thought,
well,
there's as much right to live there as anybody else.
Yeah. So, of course, there wasn't anything to do, and he moved in. And then several years later, a Jewish family moved in next door to us. Mm. And then he and my father did not go to that meeting because they had another meeting about the Jewish family that moved in. So, That was just Nashville kind of in the 70s.
Yeah, Nashville always seems like you're polite. People are polite to your face, and then they
Yeah.
do some things in the background that aren't so
Yeah,
nice.
I think people are very polite to your face.
Do you think that's what you experienced when it was first integrated at Hillsborough? People were polite, but there was still a lot of tension.
Yeah,
underneath?
I never saw any fights,
Really.
and I never saw any name calling or anything like that. Never any violence. I never saw anything like that. I just saw this self-separation. And it was just probably because everybody was anxious, scared of each other, didn't think each other would understand each other.
Can I ask quickly, was there anyone, and make sure to tell each other, was there anyone, whether it was a student or a teacher, who was trying to break that barrier?
Nope. I didn't see any. And I don't even remember having assemblies that addressed it. Maybe they were just glad everything was kind of quiet. Maybe that was it. I don't know.
Well, I know you were telling me one of your best friends in high school was Lori Foster, and you guys both went this freshman year together, but she didn't. She left after that first year.
Yeah.
Was integration part of that?
Anyway, bye here, okay. What was the question?
I was asking about Lori Foster. How she?
Oh, why her parents sent her to the other
Yeah.
school? I don't know. Probably just wanted to make her more prep for college. I don't know. I really don't remember exactly why her parents made her go to that private school.
Do you remember your first day back, in your first day of high school, what it was
I
like?
did, because my friend Lori Foster and I, we became best friends in 4th and 5th grade. Remember the little girl on the short bus with me?
Yeah.
Discussing all that? And then she went on to private school in 6th grade, and I went back to Woodmont. And then I went to Africa, and I really didn't. And then I walked in that first day, because high school started in Nashville then sophomore year.
Okay.
So when I walked in that first day, I saw her from across the room, Laurie, remember me? Your best friend in 4th? And yeah. And then we just took back up.
But you don't remember any tension or anything like that?
No, I really don't. And maybe because I was just used to being around black people all the time, and it just didn't.
Because you just come from living in Africa?
Yeah, and having black friends, and I went to an international school, so I had friends that were European and were Indian or Pakistani. It just wasn't. I didn't really. I felt more like a member of the international group. But let me tell you, I went to Vanderbilt, and my first year at Vanderbilt, it was almost like this. I was in nursing school, and we had, a large group of black people in my nursing class, and they were females. And I also was in a freshman dorm, and there were 4 floors. 3 floors were white girls, and they put all the black girls on 1 floor.
Just 'cause? Just...
Maybe they thought they'd be more comfortable. Maybe they thought the white girls would be more comfortable. I don't know, but I always thought it was so weird, because it really made a separation that I lived in a dorm and I'd see black girls all the time, but they all were all on their floor and didn't seem to mix or anything, And then in class, all the white girls sat on one side of the room, just because you sat with your people you knew, and all the black girls sat on one side. And then when people were in sororities, and kind of sororities sat together, But it was kind of weird, because Vanderbilt just mirrored, and that was 74, that mirrored kind of what was going on in my high school. So it was desegregated, but in a way, it was kind of strange.
Yeah. What was the experience like for some of your siblings? Do you remember what they would come home and say?
Well, they just thought that some of the kids were kind of wild. They'd be in class and they'd be saying that kids were jumping out of the windows, and they'd just be laughing that the kids were maybe not behaved in the way some of the white kids would have been, they thought. But the teachers were real, good. My mother thought that whoever the principal was, who was a black lady, my mother thought she was just wonderful. I think her name was Ms. Rucker, and my mother just thought she was wonderful and that she had it under control. And a lot of the white teachers that were at Woodmont came over to head to the elementary school. And my mother, who had been a teacher, really thought the teaching was good, and that a lot of white parents got involved. You know, they just didn't stay away. You know, like sometimes parents just say, well, everything's going fine at school. I don't have to go to the PTA. I don't have to show up. But parents got very involved.
So from your freshman year to graduation, did you see a progression of things that changed?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really. I mean, not really. But it didn't seem like people were unhappy or.
I don't know. So if you were planning this now, how would you have handled it differently? How would
I? I
Yeah.
would have no idea. I really don't.
really?
I mean, I see that it would have been better if they'd had like maybe some small groups. I don't even know if the home rooms were integrated. I'm trying to reflect back. You know how you have your home room is where you go, and then that's where they take roll. That's where you start your day, and then they take roll, and then you listen to the announcements, and then you go to your first class. I can't really remember if those were integrated.
Do you think a lot of it had to do with the kind of the academic track you were on, though, in particular, because you
Well,
were on
no,
this?
people in my homeroom, some of them were just, you know, flakes, kind of. They'd be asleep. You know, they come in and fall asleep, you know.
But you don't remember that.
But
Interesting.
I can't remember really any black people being in there. I wonder if they separated kids by race by their homeroom. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't in any planning, and let me tell you, I was a teenager. I was thinking about
Other
rock
things.
and roll, boys, what concert I could go to, you know.
So it wasn't like a day-to-day like concern or pop up in your head, like I'm now going to this desegregated school at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I was doing my thing, and I wasn't frightened. I wasn't scared. I didn't feel intimidated.
But you also didn't see people mixing very much either.
No, I didn't. What would I do different? Well, gosh, I would think maybe, you know, nowadays you'd have like, you know, you'd be in small groups, like, and we'll have our small group time where we'll discuss how we all think everything's going, you know, and have a place to talk in groups that are integrated. I mean, you know, I think you would do stuff like that now, but I don't even know if teachers would feel, you'd have teachers there that would feel good about leading something like that. I mean, you'd have to have a whole group of professionals probably that would be able to have little groups like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see that going on. I think it would be nice if there was some way that kids would have been able to attend
Curriculars.
curricular, be in clubs and things like that, because I don't think any of those kids, unless they were in sports, and that must have been something that the team fathers, whatever, like, we got to get those people to stay after school, and we'll find them a way to get home because we want them on our football team or whatever. I guess.
So, were there any other people besides Mr. Bug that stand out to you? Any other people you met or encountered at the school that were like going through this process of desegregation?
Well, I think there was a cheerleader, and then she ended up going to nursing school at Vanderbilt. I remember her, unless I've got her confused with somebody. I think that was her. I mean, I knew that there was a black cheerleader.
There was one black.
No, there were probably a couple of black cheerleaders. But not that I was a cheerleader. You know, I thought that was not cool. You know.
I know you thought you were the cool theater student.
Yeah, I was the cool theater student.
Yeah.
But like in our big theater productions, I don't think there was anybody black in the theater productions, just because no one tried out. I mean, if there'd been, it would have been no problem, I'm sure, to cast them. I just don't think they stayed after school.
I just wonder if it just didn't seem welcoming, and that's why. And that your
Maybe.
perception all these years later, it's just.
I would wonder to talk to. I mean, it'd be interesting to talk to someone who did go to Hillsborough in those years, what it was like for them. I mean, they just might have thought, oh, those kids didn't like us. They were looking at us weird. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess I wish I'd been a stronger person. I mean, I just didn't have the skills. And like I said, my brain was on something else. You know, it was rock and roll, boys.
I know.
What about prom parties? Was there ever?
Well, parties would just be at somebody's parents' house when they were out of town. That's a party. Prom, now I know that the black kids definitely went to prom.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing that. I mean, I went to prom. I just like walked in and walked out.
Got your picture taken, walked out.
I went to a party.
But do you remember like if people were dancing together, or did it seem very kind of separate again?
Separate, but I mean, it looked like the kids were all dressed up, and you know, that was an exciting time for them. I mean, it looked to me like they felt like it was their prom. But I mean, like I said, I walked in and walked out and went to somebody's party.
That tracks. Knowing
That tracks.
knowing
It just
that,
tracks, yeah.
that tracks.
I mean, yeah. It was just a night to get out of it. It was a night to get out of the house and like didn't have to come home till 2 or something like that, and said you were at a breakfast or something like that. Sorry, Mom and Dad. You know, and you were able to stay out late. I mean, but I do remember like a lot of the black kids were, you know, dressed up and had the tuxedos and corsages, and I saw them coming in, and
Getting their photos like everybody else.
it seemed like it was their prom too. But you know, then I think with the song, you know how you have that song?
Well, what do you mean?
Well,
like,
it used to be like proms, like they didn't they revolve around a song?
or theme. I remember like we had themes for the
All right,
prom.
usually it was a song.
Okay.
Okay, so like when I was a freshman, I think it was this Elton John song called Friends. And I just think probably all the black kids were like going, what is this song? Like, what is this theme?
Interesting.
I mean, I would think that more of a soul, back then it was like Soul Train, Soul Song or something like that. I mean, they must have been thinking like, this is so white.
Well, you were always so into music. I mean, you like music from like across all spectrums. Did you ever find that helped you identify more with some of these black students? Because I mean, I know that you
Not that I ever talked to them about it or
Really?
or I mean, I would watch Soul Train on TV, but it just didn't translate into me discussing it with anybody.
Would you say that you felt like there was maybe peer pressure, so you part of why you didn't interact? Like,
No, I just don't think that. It was like I didn't really have a place to interact. Like nobody was in my class except George. So I'd talk to him, just talking, you know, not about race or anything. We'd just be talking. And there were other people, and I mean, you know, in high school, you're very worried about not being uncool,
yes,
not being cool.
not being cool, yeah.
And so it's not like you're just going to solder up to a bunch of people in the hall talking and go, hey, I'm Lisa. You know, I'd like to be friends with y'all. You know, you would never do that because you figure they just look at you like.
But you also didn't feel like the adults in this world were trying to get you guys together, like trying to make this an active.
I think they just wanted people not to be violent and not to
Not have problems.
have problems.
Yeah. Like ease along to get along or something. Yeah.
That's all I remember. That's all I remember.
Were there other schools at the time that you were hearing about that were experiencing fights and violence?
I don't remember that.
Do you remember Cameron High School?
Yeah, did they have problems?
They had some problems. I remember that.
Okay, they were a black school.
Right.
Okay, so they were a black school, and then they bussed white people in there. So that might have been a problem.
That might have going the other way was probably more difficult, you think?
Yeah, I bet it was. But like Hillwood High School, that was a white school, and then they were bussed in. I never heard of problems over there. But they might have been. You know, there might have been. I don't know. I mean, it's not like you know.
What do you remember the politics of the time? You were talking about that summer before.
The summer before, it was that Mayor Beverly Biley, he was, you know, running for another term. And then this guy named Casey Jenkins. And he was like this, you know, we called him a racist. And he was very against desegregation. Of course, there was nothing Nashville could do. I mean, we were under a a court order. But there was this mayor race, and he was this Casey Jenkins guy. He was very vocal. And I know a lot about this because my husband's an attorney, but the guy's name was L. Clore Morton. That was the judge, the federal judge that appointed by Nixon, I think. And he was the federal judge that had to put the order down and said Nashville had to desegregate. And he was shunned.
Really?
By Nashville. He wasn't able to join the whites-only country club. I think he and his wife, instead of being a big federal judge here in town, they were really shunned. And he ended up moving to Cookeville and would have a lot of his trials in Cookeville, some in Nashville. But I think he moved himself because the white people in Nashville, I guess the ones he thought should be associating with, they would have nothing to do with him because I guess they thought, I don't know what else he could have done. I mean, he had to uphold the law, and Nashville had to desegregate. And a lot of people in Nashville would be like, oh, yeah, make us desegregate. But then what about Boston? Or, they'd talk about the northern cities that ended up desegregating later and having a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's very true. What was I going to ask about? Let's see. So what else about that summer kind of before that?
But I tell you, my family is so happy that we went to all those things. We discuss it between us.
What do you and your sisters talk about?
We just talk about what a great experience it was. And then we're all glad it happened. And it didn't hurt any of us. We all got into Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I all went to Vanderbilt.
Or Virginia.
Yeah.
Or, everybody got into good schools.
Was that the fear that somehow adding
Yes.
these kids would somehow
Yes.
decrease the value of
my education? And we wouldn't be able to get into good colleges, and we wouldn't be able to be anybody or get into graduate school, and it didn't. Or it would hurt our social standing in Nashville. Well, believe me, it hasn't. The people who wanted it in my family to be socialites or whatever, not me. But I'm just saying it didn't affect anything like that. And it only really everybody in my family feels like it gave them a certain knowledge that some people don't have.
Because you were in these desegregated
Especially
schools.
being a nurse and working at hospitals and working with all different type of people, patients and staff. I feel like I'm probably more comfortable, and so do my siblings. That it doesn't bother, they feel comfortable with all different types of people.
That's good to hear. Just thinking about my grandparents and on what because I know how important education was to Papa, and that you needed to get into Vanderbilt, and if that ever really did worry him about.
I don't think it did at all.
At all.
Mm-mm. I don't think he thought why would that be a problem? Why would that bring anybody down? It would only help people rise up. It wouldn't bring people down.
And I just think about his siblings because he had very different political views from some of his
And those
siblings.
are the ones that tried to,
get you guys all into private schools.
Yeah, because, But did it really succeed? I don't know. Did it succeed? Did it help Nashville? I guess it did in the long run, but probably didn't. I guess now our neighborhoods are a little bit more integrated, are they?
I don't know. You look at different neighborhoods.
I live in an integrated neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Did it really? I don't know. I think the thought was it was going to help integrate neighborhoods, and that when we get to where our neighborhoods were integrated, we wouldn't have to do that.
Where you wouldn't have to bus kids from one area to another.
I don't know that it really did that.
I don't know. And to be honest, when you look at things that happened up north, they have same kind of problems down south. We just get a way worse rap down south in terms of our hesitance for desegregation. But
okay, and then I'm going to bring up another thing.
Go ahead.
How come I sent my kids to private schools?
Okay, I didn't ask that, but you can go ahead and answer that question.
Why did
Well, I started off in public school,
Yeah, you went to public school, yeah.
and I brought a photo of my like kindergarten class, and there was one black girl in that whole class.
And that was because she lived in the neighborhood.
She did live there, but the neighborhood we lived in was very white. We lived in a very white part of town.
And it wasn't Davidson County.
Yeah, it was
we
out
lived
in
in
Williamson.
Williamson County. And I think it was Davidson County that was the one that had to desegregate.
Right. All right, so you never answered the question, why did you send us to private school?
Because I think as the 80s came on, I think, that was the years of the yuppies. Mm-hmm. And then competition, you felt like, gosh, my kids, are going to have so much competition. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but I didn't have it. And I guess I wanted to give it to you.
I never thought it had to do with anything racial that we
It
went
had
to
nothing to do with
private
racial,
school.
because you did have black kids,
Well,
black girls in your class.
Yeah, I had one black girl in my class, and the grade above me had two, and those were her twin sisters.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was still, I was in a very white school.
You were.
But yeah, I mean, I thought it had more to do with kind of just educational systems in Nashville in general. I never thought it was kind of racial. Just you wanted me to be really on a college preparatory track.
I did. And because we lived in the part of the city, a real white, because when we lived in Williamson County, it was really white.
Yeah.
And you were going to have to you'd be gone to a really white school.
I was there anyway.
Huh?
I mean, private school, public school, both the areas we lived in, it would have been.
Yeah. But I look back on that and I'm like, God, why'd you do that? I don't know.
I got a great education and I appreciated it, but yeah, sometimes I look at my worldview and sometimes feel like it's very colored by being in a very white bubble. I mean, when I went to college, it changed and it exposed me to more experiences. But I wonder, did you get something different than I had because you were in this desegregated school, this experience? But it sounds like you still were kept very separate, which is,
Yeah.
I just wonder, what do you, you have a granddaughter now, little.
I think her parents want her to go to public schools.
Instead of going to private schools. Is that what you want for her too?
Oh, I want whatever her parents want. I think she'll be fine either way. Because I think a lot of it's what happens at home, what you get read at home, and what you're exposed to at home.
And parental involvement.
Yeah, I think that's so much of it.
I mean, you skipped a whole grade level because your mother was so involved with you. My grandmother was a school teacher, and you were like what, tutored kindergarten first by her?
Yeah, I just started early. She taught me early, so that I just started school early. But.
So, closing questions, looking at some of these. What legacy do you want to leave for your family and your community?
Legacy.
Yeah, what do you want us to remember you for, Mother? What do you want on that tombstone? She kept a clean house.
No, she didn't. She didn't keep a clean house, but she was fun.
She was fun.
She was fun. She liked to sing. She was, very liberal in her politics. And I think the thing that to me, I wish that my life work has something to do with racial justice, and I'm not sure how I'm going to do that.
Still got a life ahead of you.
That's what I'm saying. Life's a long runway. But that would be the thing I wish that I have some influence over.
So how would you say that this desegregation experience shaped your life and who you are? Is there something you can look to and say,
Because I just, I'm certainly not someone who'd say, I'm colorblind. No,
Yeah.
It's not. I don't feel like that. I don't know. I just don't see the difference in people, like some people. And I'm not talking about the skin difference. I just don't see the inside difference. I understand people are culturally different, and I enjoy that in people. I enjoy people being different. All different types of different.
So, this is the last question. Is there something that you've always wanted to know about me, but you never asked?
No.
You don't want to ask me.
I don't want.
You don't want to know.
I
at
don't
this
want to
point.
know. I don't want to know it. I don't want to know it.
Do you have any last words for each other?
No, but thank you for inviting me
This is a fun
like I said,
conversation.
to me it was an important thing that happened to me.
Good. Well, thanks for doing this with me, Mom.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
I do have one.
Sure.
Okay.
Of my own questions.
Mhm.
I wanted to kind of go back to when you were in 7th grade, I think you said,
Mhm.
and you were making that move to go to Congo.
Mhm.
Do you remember the conversations that was happening when your parents were deciding that?
Well,
Can you just tell that?
they had asked me, what do you think about that happening? And I thought it was exciting.
When Papa decided to move the whole family to the Congo.
I thought it was very exciting. We were going to live in Europe for a while. We lived in Europe for like 6 months, and I went to a Belgian school. I had to learn French. I had to do the
Yeah, didn't you
school.
say you had to you cheated?
I cheated left and right. I mean,
'Cause you couldn't speak French.
I didn't speak French, and I'd have tests, and I would just look at the girl next to me and just write my. I felt like I could. Why not? I couldn't speak French, but I mean, in like several months, I learned a lot of French, and then and I went to a great school, American school, international school, and it was great. I loved it.
But when they were saying we're going to be moving here, because the plan was to live there 5 years initially.
No, just 2 years.
It was just 2
here.
years.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
And-
it was India that they wanted to live there longer.
I was just excited. How exciting to get to go, to a different country, and I was excited.
I don't think I would have been that excited. I mean, if you would come home one day and go, all right, you're going to leave all your friends and family behind. You're going to move to this different continent where you don't know anyone, you don't speak the language, but you were just game. You just wanted to.
It was game.
Did you remember like any tension, especially like coming from the segregated South to moving to a country that's all black?
That didn't bother me at all. It really didn't bother me at all. And the American kids and European kids I lived with, they would have not tolerated me being bothered by it. They were used to living. I mean, most of them had grown up in the Congo, and like I said, I went to boarding school, and so they had lived in the bush when they were younger and gone to school with these people and knew the language and knew their culture, and no, they would not have tolerated if I'd said something.
Did they think it was unusual that you were from the South, the American South?
No, because a lot of them were too.
Okay.